Good morning, everyone. Apologies for my slightly slow start today. I forgot the most important task that I need to do before I start the lecture, and that is to get my cup of coffee organised. So now that that's sorted, we can all begin. So where we're... that's the sound of me stirring my coffee. Now, where we were last week was that we started our first lecture on the topic of comparative and, absolute advantage and then comparative advantage. And we saw that from there, it's economically efficient for people to specialise in the areas of production in which they have the greatest comparative advantage, or to put it a slightly different way, where they have the lowest opportunity cost. So that's step one. And then if we go to the point of specialising, the first thing that we do then is specialise in what we're best at. And we don't just produce what we need ourselves, but we specialise and maybe sell products to other people. And that was lecture 2. And we looked at the issue of supplying goods and services to other people, and we saw that the rule of supply is that the firm or the supplier needs to be able to cover the marginal cost of production in the short run. They need to be able to cover all the costs of production in the long run, but they need to be able to cover the marginal cost of production in the short run, and that marginal cost curve then becomes their supply curve. Today, we're looking at the other side of the market, that is the demand curve. Now, when we supply goods and services, we earn income in an economy that operates in a monetized economy. We'd earn income, and then we have to decide what we're going to buy with our income, because the opportunity cost exists both in supply and demand. The way it exists in demand is that I have a certain amount of income, and if I spend my income on nights out and drinking, partying, and so forth, then yes, that might be a perfectly rational decision because I've considered the opportunity costs. But the opportunity cost of having that night out and perhaps spending $100, $150 perhaps is the other things that could be potentially bought with that income. So that's what we're looking at today. We're looking at where our demand derives from and the decisions that we make around demand. And then later in the lecture, we're looking at the issue of elasticity. When we demand goods, we think about two things, right? The first thing we think about is, first, how much do I want the good? The second thing that we think about is, what does it cost? And then I have to work out, well, the benefit of the good, and I have to weigh that against the cost. Now, when I'm thinking about the cost, I'm thinking not just about the cost in money, I'm thinking about the other goods that money could buy. So if I spend my night out drinking, partying, then I give up certain income, or I give up certain money, amounts of money to do that. I also give up the potential to do other things. So there is an opportunity cost there in consuming the good. But the money that we spend also has an opportunity cost. So essentially there's two opportunity costs involved in our night out. First of all, the time, and secondly, the money and what the money could buy. So that's where we're really going to start today. So I'm going to switch screens now, and we're going to get into demand in the perfectly competitive market. So away we go. All right, so you can see in front of you now, this is our start of our lecture, and I'll be remaining on this screen for most of the lecture. I might come back to you once or twice, but you'll have this screen open to you for most of the lecture. So today, what's our lecture about? Our lecture is about demand. All right, it's about demand in the perfectly competitive market. So we are going to consider a consumer, and this consumer is Isa, right, or short for Isabel. Just so you know this, you'll remember Alberto last week was our first producer, and Alberto and Isa, are the two developers of Playconomics. In real life, they are the two developers of Playconomics. So in any case, they've built themselves into the lectures as well, right? So we meet Isa, and she is a consumer. And basically, she has two consumption options, soda and other goods. So when we say soda and other goods, right, we really mean soda or other goods, because every consumer choice involves an opportunity cost. So now, I just noticed a little misprint on the paper here, right? We've got this term I'm going to talk to you about here called utils. Now, utils is just short for utility, right? And here's our misprint here. This should be utils, and this should be utils, etc. So what utility means is the satisfaction that we derive from consuming a good or a service. So here's utility. I might go back to our previous slide in a minute. Right? Utility represents the satisfaction that we derive from consuming a given unit or service. So we measure utils. I'm going to get out of this screen for a minute and talk to you about this concept. So we're measuring our utility, the satisfaction that we derive from consuming a good, in utils. You never think in utils. I never think in utils. In reality, no one thinks in utils. But it's still a relevant concept. Here before me, I have my cup of coffee. Now, you asked me to rate my cup of coffee. How much satisfaction do I get from my cup of coffee this morning? Well, look, I was hanging out for this coffee. I haven't had a coffee yet today. It's not a great coffee. I made it myself. I'd get a better one down at the cafe. But if you ask me to rate this cup of coffee now that I'm drinking, I'm going to give it 8 out of 10. So what am I really saying? I'm really saying in units of utility, in units of satisfaction, I'm giving, this has got, let's call it 8 utils. All right, 8 utils. And but when we talk about utility, we're not just talking about utility. We're talking about marginal utility. So let's imagine I finish my cup of coffee. All right, I've enjoyed it. It gave me 8 units of satisfaction. That's fantastic. However, then I'm then considering about having another cup of coffee. All right, I'm considering having another cup of coffee. So here's my second cup of coffee now. All right, my second cup of coffee. Am I going to give this 8 out of 10? And normally the answer will be no. I will not give it 8 out of 10, even though it's an identical cup of coffee, because I've already had a cup of coffee. So I don't need this. I don't crave it in much the same way. We're all different. We all value our products differently, but the general rule is the more we have of something, each time we consume another unit of that product, it gives us less satisfaction than the product before. And that will be the case with food, it will be the case with clothes, it will be the case with cars. I might get great satisfaction from my first car, but I won't get the additional satisfaction if I buy a second car or a third car or a fourth car, because I can only drive one car at a time. And so each additional car gives me less satisfaction than the car before, assuming, of course, that the cars are of similar quality and standard. So that's the rule of marginal utility. So let's just think about that concept as we make our way through the next few slides. So, as I just said to you, as we consume more and more of a good, we assume our marginal utility is going to decrease. So the more we consume of something, the less that satisfaction that unit of the good will give us compared to the units before. So I'm going to go back to Isa now. And what we're going to see with Isa is this, that when she consumed her first unit of soda, this brings 2 units of utility. But the second unit does not bring 2 units. The second unit brings 1 1/3, right? 1.33. The third unit brings 1 unit. So what we're seeing here, as we go down this table here, is that her marginal utility is falling. All right, her marginal utility is falling. And there's a big concept that we need to tie to this, and that is the issue of price. Because if Isabella's marginal utility is falling, then I want you to think about this. How much would she be prepared to pay for the first coffee, and how much would she be prepared to pay for the third coffee? Would it be the same amount? And the answer is it wouldn't be the same amount, because if the marginal utility is falling, then the coffee is not as satisfying, and therefore the price that she would want to pay or be prepared to pay for that coffee is going to fall. So that's the principle here, that the more we consume of something, the marginal utility falls, and given that we're going to pay a price to get our marginal utility, to achieve marginal utility, if something is less satisfying, then the marginal utility, if something is less satisfying, in other words, the marginal utility is lower, the price that we would pay for it is also lower. So just think about that concept for a minute, and then we'll proceed down a few slides. So we've already been through the second slide, we've already been through the third slide, now I'm getting to the fourth slide. So what we can see here in the slide in front of us is firstly, we've got 2 other goods. You can see the other goods do not obey the law of diminishing marginal utility. The marginal utility there is just constant. Now that's probably not realistic for the other good, but we're doing that so we can turn this good into a bit of a lesson about marginal utility. So we're really concentrating on the soda, and we're just imagining that we've got these 2 goods, and Isa has to decide between one or the other good. So we begin by looking at good number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's look at these goods down here. good 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. There's our marginal utility. And you can see that as we go down here, right, as we go down here, the quantity is going up. The quantity is going up, and the total utility is going up, but the marginal utility is not going up, because when we go from good 1 to good 2, we go from 2 to 3.3, which means the change is 4 on 3, or 1.33. However, when we go down a bit further, when we go from good 4 to good 5, then our marginal utility is no longer, right, so this is 1.33 here, but down here it's 0.66. In other words, it's falling away. So if I think about this product, and draw a line across there, down as far as 3 goods, the marginal utility of soda is equal to or bigger than the marginal utility of other goods. But then when we continue down, beyond good number 3, if we go to good number 4, 5, we go down like this, we can see now that the marginal utility is lower than the other goods. All right, now let's go back and just remember what the prices of these 2 goods are, right? The prices of these 2 goods is that the price of 1 can of soda is $2, and the price of one unit of the other good is $1. All right. So over here, right, remember the price of 2 goods is the price of soda is $2. So let's just write that in, right? $2, and the price of the other goods is $1. As we continue down through our slides. So if both goods are free, right? If both goods were free, remember that both goods will not be free. Isa can choose one good, all right? One good. She has one choice. So what will she choose first? Well, I can see that the marginal utility of the first unit of soda is 2, and the marginal utility of the first of the other goods is 1. So if Isa has only one choice, she will choose the soda first. So I'm going to say, okay, choice number 1, right? Choice number 1 is soda. Now, what about choice number 2? Choice number 2. We say you can now have a second choice, Isa. What would you like to choose second? And she will say, well, the second unit of soda will deliver me 4.3. The other one will only deliver me 1. So the second one will also be soda. Right, what about the third choice? What about the third choice? We say, well, you've had 2 choices. You chose soda both times. And what are you going to choose the next time? And she will say something like this. Well, the soda gives me 1 unit. The third unit of soda gives me 1 unit. Now, the third unit of soda, she has to compare this third unit of soda with the first unit of the other goods because she has had no other good yet. So she will, it's an even money bet, right? So her choice, right, the soda equals the other good. So that's just we have no clear answer on that. If she's already drinking the soda, maybe she just stays with the soda. But then let's go to the fourth choice, right? If she goes to the fourth choice, imagine that she does have the soda. Then we go to the fourth choice. What choice is she then facing? She's then saying, all right, when on my fourth choice, for my fourth unit, this is now 0.8, but my first unit of the other good would be 1. So in this case, she is definitely going to choose the other good, right? She will definitely choose the other good. So at some point, people will switch from one product to the other product because product A has a falling marginal utility, whereas the other product has not had a falling marginal utility because she has yet to consume the other product. So that's what would happen if the product was free, all right? If the product was free, but then we know that the product is not free, all right? So we see that in this case, if she's got $4 to spend, then how is she going to choose which product to buy? So this is where we then have to build in the issue of price. So we're going to build in the issue of price here. What's price got to do with this? Well, remember that the soda costs $2 and the other good costs $1. So if we think about value for money, what we have to do is we have to say, what is the marginal utility per dollar? All right, what's the marginal utility per dollar? So if I think about Izza's 2 units of marginal utility for good number 1, the marginal utility for good number 1 is equal to 2 units of marginal utility over $2, which equals 1 per dollar, right? 1 unit of marginal utility per dollar. That's a very unneat one, right? $1 equals 1 unit of marginal utility. On the other hand, on the other side, if we think about the marginal utility per dollar over here, then these goods are equal to $1. So this is simple, right? We have 1 unit of marginal utility all the way down here, and each one costs $1, right? So that's what it is. It's just 1 unit per dollar. So Izza, on the first unit, if she's thinking about the first unit, she will say, well, I've got $4 to spend. So I think I will do this. She will buy 1 unit of soda. The reason she'll buy 1 unit of soda is because she can't subdivide. She can't subdivide the sodas. She can't say, I'll have half a unit of soda. She buys the soda, and she gets 1 unit per dollar. But then when she is faced with buying the second unit, right? When she is faced with buying the second unit, her equation changes completely, because now her marginal utility of the second unit, if I take this down here, if I take the marginal utility of the second unit, it's basically 1.33 over $2, which now only equals 0.66 units per dollar, and that is less than this over here. So what Isabella is going to do with her $4 is do this, right? what she's going to do here, right? We've calculated this. She will allocate her $4 this way. She'll buy 1 unit over here. This can't be subdivided, and then 2 units of this, and that is her $4, right? So $2 times 1 and $1 times 2. That's the way that we assume that she will do this. Alternatively, she could. There is a second possible answer, of course, and that is she may just choose to go down the 4 units of the other goods straight away. However, we assume that maybe the idea of varying what she buys has some appeal as well, even though the margin utility is the same. All right, so here we have it. Right, this is the marginal utility per dollar is the same for the first unit of each. The marginal utility is the same for the first unit of each. But after that, when we get to the second unit, the marginal utility of all these goods is less than all of these goods over on the right. So she might buy the first unit, but she will certainly buy no more units of the product. Now, if that's the case, and I want to sell soda to Isabella, what prices will I charge? I'm competing against the other good, right? So if I'm thinking about, well, what about the seller of, right? What about the seller of soda? I need to match this price over here. I need to match $1 per unit of product. So 1 unit per dollar. How could I match 1 unit per dollar? Well, what I could do is I could charge $2 for the first unit. If I charge $2 for the first unit, I'll change colour, right? $2. If I charge $2 for the first unit and the marginal utility is 2, then the marginal utility per dollar is the marginal utility per dollar is 1 per dollar, which is equal to the other product. But in order to sell her a second good, what price would I have to offer? Well, her marginal utility to bring this number up, to bring that number up to $1 per unit of marginal utility, the price would have to fall to $1.33, etc., etc. So in order to, the seller of soda will have to bring the price down to bring the quantity up. And the prices that the seller will have to sell for is these prices here. $2 for the first, $1.3 for the second, $1 for the third, 80 cents for the fourth, and 66 cents for the fifth. So as the price rises, to get quantity to go up, to get quantity to rise, the price must fall. And if the price does not fall, if the price does not fall, people will simply switch to the other good, and this seller will never sell any more than 1 unit of the product. So this is where we get our law of demand from. So when we think about the quantity demanded of a good, the quantity demanded is different to demand. The quantity demanded is different to demand. And the reason we say it's different is because we use some specific wording to explain it. the quantity demanded represents the quantity that we buy, okay, the quantity that we buy, but of a given good that maximizes the utility experienced by the individual consuming it. And of course, this depends on price. So the quantity that we buy is the quantity that we buy at a given price. So the demand curve represents the relationship. The demand curve represents the relationship between the price of the good and the quantity demanded of that good. So we're going to wind up with a curve in a minute. We're going to wind up with a curve. Our curve will look like this. On the vertical axis, we're going to write the price, and on the horizontal axis, we're going to write the quantity. So we have a curve that puts these two together, and here we have it here. So if the price so in the case of ISA's demand curve, so we're not doing any demand curve. We're doing ISA's demand curve. This is ISA demand curve. If the price was $4, then she would buy no goods. And the reason she would buy no goods is because, remember, the marginal utility of the first good was 2. And if the price was $4, that would give 0.5 per dollar, and that is less than the other product. The other product was 1 unit per dollar. So if the price is $4, then she's not going to consume any products at all. In order to get her to buy 1 unit, the price needs to be $2, and that means that the marginal utility equals 1 unit over $1. Then, in order to get her to buy a second unit, what would the price need to be? $1.33. And what would that give her? A marginal utility of 1 unit per dollar. And if we want her to get her to buy a third unit, remember the marginal utility of the third unit was $1. If you charged $1, this would be 1 unit per dollar. And so the price has to continue to fall in order for Isabella to keep buying more of the product. Because, as I said to you at the very start, in order to buy one product, you are giving up another product. The other product is offering 1 unit of utility per dollar. Unless this good is providing the same level of value, if you like, then she won't buy any more of this good. So that leads us to the law of demand. The tendency for consumers to demand more of a good when the price of the good or service falls. So we can express this law of demand in a couple of ways. We can say that it's terrible. Apologies. As the price goes up, the quantity of demand goes down, or we could put it a different way. As the price goes down, the quantity that we demand goes up. So we can put it two different ways, but in the end, it comes down to the same thing, and that is that price and the quantity demanded are inversely related. They're inversely related. In other words, they move in opposite directions. Whoops. I've messed that spelling of that last word up. Anyway, they're inversely related. Moving along. So why did the demand for soda, why did the price of soda rise when the price fell? Because, this is a mistake here, excuse me. Why did the demand for soda fall when the price went up? Because the other goods became relatively cheaper than before. So ISA decided to switch to the other goods. So if the demand for soda goes higher, then basically her marginal utility per dollar falls, and she simply moves to the other good. So we call that the substitution effect. That's the substitution effect. On the other hand, there's another reason why the quantity demanded will fall as the price of soda or any product goes up, and that's because she simply has less money. We call that the income effect. So let's just think about the general shape of the demand curve here. Here is our demand curve. Here's the quantity. Here's the price axis. As the price goes from the red price and the red quantity, I'll call that point 1 and point 1, and it rises as the price goes up to price 2, the quantity will move in, and that quantity will move in for 2 reasons. So I'm going to go back to the camera here for a bit. So we've got the law of demand. As the price goes up, we're going to buy less goods. We're going to buy less goods for 2 reasons: the substitution effect and the income effect. So let's think about the substitution effect. I want to buy my coffee. All right, I want to buy my coffee, and it costs $5 at my local cafe. I also want to buy a croissant, but I don't really have enough for 2 of them. So at the moment, I'm buying the croissant, right? At the moment, I've got a choice. I'm buying the croissant. But then the coffee owner wants to sell me more coffee. So what can the coffee owner do? The coffee shop owner could lower the price. And in my head, I'm thinking this: the coffee is now better value, and at some point, the coffee will become better value than the croissant. It'll become more value for money. In my head, what I'm doing in a kind of abstract way is saying, what is the utility per dollar for the coffee? How much? I'm not really saying that. What I'm saying is it good value or not? It's the same concept, only with different words. Is it good value or not? And at some point, I'll decide it's better value than the other product, and I might switch from the other product to the coffee. That's called the substitution effect. I'm jumping from one product to the other product because it's better value. So that's the first concept. The second thing is this: what's another reason why I might buy more coffee? The other reason I might buy more coffee is, remember, I only had enough money for a croissant, and I didn't have enough money for a coffee and a croissant. I had enough money for one of them. And I've got a limited income. If the price of this product falls, from $5 to $4, then against my income, that represents a lower proportion of my income that I'm spending on coffee. And under those circumstances, I might buy more coffee. I'll put it to you a different way. My snack budget over the course of the week, my breakfast coffee budget, if you like, over the course of the week is $20. If the price of the coffee is $4, then I'm buying 5 coffees. On the other hand, if inflation makes the price of the coffee go to $5, now I'm only buying 4 coffees. If the price of coffee went to $10, now I'm only buying 2 coffees. And in fact, maybe I won't buy any coffees because I then have to compare it to the price of other goods as well. And the substitution effect is also in play. So this is what we're thinking when we're deciding what to buy or whether to buy or how much to buy of a product. We think, first of all, how much do we like it? That's the utility. Then we're thinking, what's the price of other goods and how much do I like them? Then that's the marginal utility per dollar issue. And if I see my consuming patterns change, I'm jumping from one to the other. What I'm really doing without ever studying economics is thinking about the value and thinking about the value per dollar or the marginal utility per dollar. And the other thing that I'm always thinking about, of course, is how much money I actually have. That's the income effect. So those are the forces in play that are behind the shape of the demand curve. Okay, so I'm going to switch back to our other screen. Okay, where we go, we'll switch back to our other screen. Somehow I've managed to lose my presentation here. I don't know what's going on here. Okay, there we go. You should have that now. So we move down. So the substitution effect means that we're thinking about the relative price of products. Right? The substitution effect is about the relative price of 2 products, and as a result of that, when the price of the product goes up, the quantity will go down because we're going to switch to the other product. When the price goes down, the quantity consumed will go up because we're going to switch from the other products. We're switching from the other products. All right, and then the income effect, again, as the price goes up, what could we say? We would say our income, our real income, has fallen. Our real income refers to our consuming power, our purchasing power. And as a result of our purchasing power going down, then we will consume less. On the other hand, if the price goes down, then our real income has gone up, and therefore we can consume more. That's the income effect. But of course, what we're really thinking about now is this term real income. Right? Our real income. And our real income is not the amount of dollars, It's not the amount of dollars, it's the amount of dollars over the price. So our real income is, of course, our income over the price of the goods that we're trying to buy. That's what we mean by the real income. How many goods that can we buy with the available money income that we have? And of course, there's been lots of discussion in recent years on the issue of real income and the cost of living crisis. What the cost of living crisis is really about is the fact that our real income is falling because although our money income might be the same, we can't buy as many goods as we did before. So on the subject of the income effect, not all goods are the same. So most goods, for normal goods, and remember, normal goods are most goods. So normally what happens? Normally, as our income goes up, we will normally consume more goods. So as our income goes up, we will normally consume more goods. On the other hand, as our income goes down, we will normally consume less goods. I don't think that is a surprising rule. So as we earn more money, we're going to go on more holidays. We'll buy more clothes. We'll probably go out to restaurants more often. We'll buy more food. We'll buy more furniture. We'll buy more of most goods over time as our income goes up. So that's normal goods. Now, for some normal goods, the income effect tends to be larger. So for luxury goods, as your income goes up, the demand for luxury goods tends to go up more than the level of income. There are other goods where the income goes up and we buy more of the good, but we don't buy much more of the good. For example, something like shampoo or toothpaste. Right? My income goes up, but I still have the same amount of teeth. And I still will probably buy more toothpaste simply because I've got more income and I might not be as careful in the way that I use the toothpaste. But I will buy more toothpaste, but I won't buy a great deal more. So that's normal goods. We're buying more goods when we have more income. There are other goods called inferior goods. I'm circling them in green. And these do not obey the normal rule. So this is the sort of thing that happens. We get more income and we actually buy less of the other good. How could that be? That when I get more income and I lower my consumption of a certain good. So I'm going to give you an example. Imagine, maybe you don't have to imagine, maybe this is you. Imagine you are a poor student, you have very little income, you have to really make your income stretch. So when you go to the supermarket, you buy these sorts of things. You buy 2-minute noodles. If you buy ice cream, you don't buy the Ben & Jerry's brand, you tend to buy the supermarket, no-name, black and white type product. But then you leave uni, you get a proper paying job, your income goes up, and suddenly you say, I'm not buying that cheap stuff anymore. I am going to switch to these goods. I'm going to switch to normal goods. So I'm going to buy less. I'm going to buy less 2-minute noodles, and I might buy more of the high-priced groceries. On the other hand, it also works in reverse. that when your income goes down, maybe you are forced to buy more of the inferior goods for two reasons. Your income has gone down. So what are the two reasons that you're buying more of the inferior goods? One, you're poor, and two, they are cheap. So they're inferior goods. But although we've spoken about inferior goods, remember, most goods are normal goods. Most goods tend to be normal goods. But there are goods that work in the reverse direction. So when we put the substitution effect together, we know that price, there's an arrow here, it's not drawn very clearly. When the price goes up, the overall quantity of goods falls, and when the price goes down, the quantity of goods normally goes up. That's what it is for normal goods, right? That's what it is for normal goods. For a Giffen good, very rare. Okay, so there's one other type of good. There's one other type of good. This is called a Giffen good. This is very rare. I'm going to give you an example of a Giffen good. Right, a Giffen good. Think about a Rolex watch. So, this is the sort of good that when the price goes up, the quantity demanded for it actually goes up as well. All right. Sometimes these are called Giffen goods. Sometimes they're called Veblen goods. I don't think you need to worry about in this course the difference. They both, the Veblen good is actually the Rolex, but they work in this way. When the price of a Rolex goes up, think about what that means to the consumer of a Rolex. Most of us are not consumers of Rolex. So think about the person who is a consumer of Rolex. Normally, there's someone who's already on a high income and someone who perhaps is very driven by status. So they like to be seen driving around in the Maserati, which is also a Veblen good. And as the price of the Maserati or the Rolex goes up, the status attached to driving the Maserati or wearing the Rolex goes up. And so what that means is for these goods, the quantity that is demanded might actually go up because being expensive gives you more status when you buy the good, because less and less people can buy that good, and there are very few people in that club anyway, and so the goods might become more appealing as a result of them being expensive. All right, so the demand curve. The demand curve can be read horizontally or vertically. So let's think about this for a minute. The demand curve. How do we read the demand curve vertically? All we say is this. Here's the demand curve. Here's the quantity. What if I tell you that there is only so many goods available? Right, that is the quantity there. All right, that's the quantity there. And so if that's the quantity, I have to say, well, at that quantity, what is the price going to be for that good? How much will the consumers be willing to pay to get one of those goods that exists? So that is reading it vertically. Over here, if I want to think about reading it horizontally, I'd say this. All right, we have the good, here's the quantity, here's the price, and the seller sets the price where I'm making the green dot. And the question I'm asking now is, how much would the buyers buy if that dot is the price? And of course, I just go out to the line and I drop it down. So really, there's not much to reading these horizontally or vertically. It's just a question of the language we use. If the seller sets the price, then the demander will decide how many to buy. If the seller sets the quantity over here, then we then have to ask, well, what price does the price need to be in order for that quantity to be sold? So that's our interpretation of the demand curve. Of course, I've got straight line curves written there, so I've really jumped ahead, haven't I? When we do this, the discrete curve to the continuous curve, this should be a T and an I in here. Every time I load this onto my mixing studio, somehow the printing drops out on these. I apologise for that. But in any case, this is a discrete curve here. Why is it a discrete curve? Because I say at $2, one good will be bought. At $1.33, two goods will be bought. At $1, three goods will be bought. So it's a discrete curve because it's jumping from one step to the next, but it doesn't tell us anything that's going on between the intervals here. It doesn't tell us anything about what's going on between there. So that's a discrete curve, and this discrete curve tends to apply, right? They apply at very low quantities. So I could draw a discrete curve for an individual person, and that's what this demand curve is, as you remember from our presentation to this point. This is Isabella's demand curve, and her demand will fall. Her demand will fall as the price rises, or her quantity demanded will rise as the price falls. So it applies at very low quantities. On the other hand, when we have very large quantities, so this is, large quantities, or should I say large numbers of consumers, then our quantities will be much higher. So you can see over here, if we're thinking about the quantities over here, we might be thinking about, 1 million cans of soda, perhaps, because we have many consumers in the economy. Maybe those numbers are much higher. Whereas if we go to the number above, we don't have 1 million. We just have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. We're very low quantities, and not only that, we've got very low quantities of goods and also of consumers. So between these 2 points that I'm indicating, the 2 black dots, ISA will demand no goods. But what about some other consumer? Between $2 and $1.33, there's probably many other consumers that will change their demand between $2 and $1.33, because ISA is only one consumer. So when we move down to the next line, this line in front of us is more representative of what we would get in the real economy, because there are probably consumers at every little stage along this line. There's consumers at every point along this line. So it's a continuous line. Now, I want to talk to you about this line for a minute. I'm going to go back here. I'm going to talk to you about this line, and I'm going to get you to think about just one other issue here, and this is the issue of the reservation price. The reservation price. You can see all the way down this line, all the way down the line, there is a relationship between the price and the quantity. So in this case, on this line, there's large numbers of consumers. They are not all the same. For example, consumer number 1 has a reservation price I'm marking on the black dot. Consumer number 2 has a different reservation price. Why will they have a different reservation price? They'll have a different reservation price for a number of possible reasons, right? Firstly, maybe they have different levels of income, or maybe they have different levels of satisfaction, utility attached to the good. Some people may like the good more than other people. So all the way down that line is different reservation prices. Although they have different reservation prices, imagine that this is coffee, right? Imagine that this product is coffee. I'll go one more down here. I'll go to consumer number 5. Imagine that this is coffee. And imagine that the coffee shop sets the price here, right, at $4. How many people will buy this good? Well, 4 will buy the good. Now, what price will they pay? Well, you know what it's like when you go to a coffee shop. Everyone is paying the same price. So although everyone has a different reservation price, that does not mean everyone is paying a different amount. They're all paying the same price. 4 consumers will buy the good. 4 consumers will buy the good. Consumer number 5, of course, is going to miss out on the good because consumer number 5 has a reservation price, which I'm indicating with an arrow, and that reservation price is below the actual price. So that consumer is saying to themselves, I'm not buying that good. Why am I not buying that good? Because I don't want to pay $4. Maybe I don't want to pay $4 because I don't have $4, or maybe I don't want to buy it because I can spend $4 better on another good. In other words, the substitution effect. But the demand curve is made up of the reservation prices of all the different consumers. And we're going to come back to that at some other point in our lectures. So when there's a change in the quantity of a good, when there's a change in the price of a good, I want you to think about what happens. Here's the quantity, here's the price, and if I nominate a price at P1, then Q1 will be bought. If I nominate a price at P2, then Q2 will be bought. So what's happened between P1 and P2? We have moved along the curve, right? We've moved along the curve. So when the price changes, what happens? We move along the curve. Now, this is a big issue. We need to understand what makes us move along the curve. Only one thing makes us move along the curve, and that is a change in the quantity makes us move along the curve, and I call that a change in the quantity demanded. All right? Sorry, there's a mistake there. I'll take that back. What makes us move along the curve? Not the change in quantity, the change in price makes us move along the curve. Or of course, a change in quantity could make us move along the curve if, for example, something happens to the quantity. So if something happens to the quantity, perhaps the quantity gets destroyed in a fire or something, then the price would rise. But again, we would move along the curve. So that's what causes a movement along the curve. We say it's a relationship between the price and the quantity. So that's one thing that can change demand. So we've got movements along the curve, but that is different to movements of the curve. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to talk to you first of all about two different products. Substitutes and complements. I'm going to talk to you about complements first, substitutes first. I want you to think about this idea. I can come to uni, or I can go to my work by two means, right? One, car. Two, bus. Now, of course, to drive the car, I need petrol. And there is a demand curve for petrol. Here's my demand curve here for petrol. Here's the quantity. Here's the price. And here is the bus. There's the demand curve for the bus. And then I want you to think about, well, what happens if the price of petrol goes from P1 to P2? Petrol is now more expensive. People buy less petrol. They go from Q1 to Q2. And that means less people are buying petrol, less people are driving their cars. So we've got a movement this way, right? We've got a movement to the left along the demand curve. So we've gone that way along our demand curve, and that is called a change in the quantity demanded. It's a change in the quantity demanded. What caused it? The only thing that causes it is a price. We don't have a new curve. We just move from point A on the curve to point B on the curve. No new curve. We move along the curve. However, what are consumers going to do now? If they're not driving their cars as much, they are going to move to the bus. The bus fare is exactly the same. But now more people are on the bus. So at this price, at P1, more people are on the bus. So now we have a new curve, and we call this D2. That's D2. And that is the substitution effect. That's how the substitution effect works. Because the price of one good causes the quantity of another good to change. So this is the substitution effect, and this is called an increase in demand. It's not cause a rise in the quantity demanded. This is an increase in demand. What's the difference between an increase and a change in the quantity demanded? A new curve, right? That is an increase in demand, and that's the substitution effect, because the car is a substitute, or the petrol is a substitute for the petrol is a substitute for the bus, right? It's a substitute. The car and the petrol together are a substitute for the bus. Now, then I want to think about these other goods, which are complements, right? So what's the substitute? Well, the substitute might be petrol and the bus. What are two goods that go together, right? What are two goods that go together? Well, two goods that go together are petrol and cars. So these are going to have a different relationship. So let's go to the next slide. Now, I've had a demand curve for the petrol. What about a demand curve for cars? What would that look like? So here's our demand curve for cars. The petrol price went up and people bought less petrol. If people are buying less petrol, over time, people are buying less cars. So the demand curve has now moved to the left because this rise in the price of petrol caused the demand for cars, right? The demand for cars to go down. People buy less cars because petrol's more expensive. They say, well, I can't afford to drive a car anymore. I'm just going to start catching the bus. So in this case, here, this is called a decrease in demand. That's a decrease in demand. And a decrease in demand also means we have a new demand curve, just the same as an increase causes a new demand curve. They both cause a new demand curve. And so we can then go back to our previous slide and we can say that a substitutes means this, that an increase in the price of one causes an increase in the quantity of another. But in the case of complements, an increase in the price of one causes a decrease in the price of the complement. So what all this discussion about substitutes and complements means is this. I'll just see what the next slide is here. Yes. So what shifts the demand curve to the right? Right, what's going to cause this to happen? We have a demand curve, and then even at the existing price, more is now demanded. What causes that to happen? Firstly, there are numerous things that cause us to buy more of a product, right? A decrease in the price of a complement, an increase in the price of substitutes, more income for a normal good, less income for inferior goods, a positive shift in consumer preferences, expectations about the future prices, or population growth. So we're going to finish this part of the lecture now, but we're going to certainly continue with the lecture. I'm going to go right through. It'll be a 2-hour lecture. Lucky for you that you can take a break and replay this all later. But I'm going to keep going to the end. But what we've just looked at then is the shape of the demand curve. The demand curve slopes down. When the price changes, we move along the demand curve, along the existing demand curve. So a change in price doesn't make the demand curve move. It doesn't make a new demand curve. On the other hand, the demand curve can move. So if it's in a given spot, it can move to a different spot. That's a shift in the demand curve. If it moves to the right, then that means even though the price doesn't change, or even if the price doesn't change, then people would buy more goods for different reasons. So the price of the good might be the same, but something happens to the price of another good. Maybe the substitute good gets more expensive. So Pasta gets more expensive. So what happens to the demand curve for rice? People buy more rice simply because for lots of people, noodles and pasta are substitute goods. I've already given you an example of petrol and cars. But what about on holidays? What if the price of hotels becomes more expensive? Then what will happen is people will be saying, oh, it's more expensive to go on holidays now, so we won't go on holidays as much. So the demand for hotels will fall, but the demand for plane rides will also fall. So those products are complements. And then we know that more income will allow us to buy more goods, most normal goods. So for normal goods, the demand curve will move to the right. If we get more income, it will move to the left if we get less income. On the other hand, for inferior goods, an increase in demand, an increase in our income might cause the demand curve to move to the left. So there are numerous things that can shift demand. One thing that we mentioned at the end of that list that I just had in front of you is the satisfaction or the utility of the goods. So what might cause the demand curve, for example, to shift for a given product? Why might people suddenly start to buy it even though the price really hasn't changed? Fashion might be an aspect, or some sort of people getting into health more. That might cause the demand for certain types of fruits to grow, even though the price hasn't necessarily changed. And one of the other factors is population. I want you to think about the demand for ice creams at the beach. In July in Sydney, it's wintertime, it's cold. The demand curve might be at a certain spot, but then as summer comes on, there's more people going to the beach. It's also hotter. So even though the price of the ice creams is the same, the demand for those ice creams might rise simply because there's more people around and the satisfaction, the utility that the ice cream brings has increased. So we'd just be aware that we can have movements along the curve and we can have movements of the curve, and we need to really think about the causes of each of those, because they're not the same cause. I'm going back to the slide presentation now. Okay, now this then brings us to our next level of our next part of this topic, which is the issue of, again, my printing has dropped out here, the price elasticity of demand. The price elasticity of demand. So price elasticity represents the percentage change in the quantity demanded resulting from a percentage change in the price. And so really what we're looking at here is how much does demand change when the price changes. We know from our demand curve, when the price changes, the quantity, I'll do this in different colors, sorry. When the price changes, the quantity also changes. But the question is, how much does it change? How much does the demand change when the quantity changes? So let me jump forward a couple of slides, and I'm going to give you two examples here. I've got product A. Right, product A, product B. They've both got a demand curve. And right now, the price for both products is P1. Price for both products, P1. And right now, the quantity for both products is Q1. So far, we've got two identical prices, two identical quantities, and then we find that the price rises to P2. The price rises to P2. Here we are, both have a price rise at P2. We know that the quantity will fall. We know that the quantity will fall. However, maybe it doesn't fall by the same amount. Maybe it doesn't fall by the same amount. So think about this issue here. In the case of P2, the price goes up, but the quantity, it does fall, but it doesn't fall very much. So it goes from Q1 to Q2. Price goes up, but it doesn't fall very much. So there's our rise in the price, right? There's our rise in the price. And here is our fall in the quantity. It's not very big. On the other hand, product B, right? Product B has a demand curve that looks like this. When the price goes to P2, it's got a demand curve that looks like that. At this new price, this new quantity is way over here, Q2. You can see that the change in the quantity, right? The change in the quantity is much bigger. So although both are demand curves, we move along both curves, right? We're moving along both curves. Let's move along these curves in red. We moved along this curve. We moved along the curve on the right. We moved along both curves, but you can see that the response is much bigger. Here's our word back 2 slides. Our responsiveness was much bigger in slide number, in product number B. Now the question is why? All right, why would one product move much more than the other? Well, I want you to think about A. A and B. Which product do you think would have more substitutes? Well, I think product B would have more substitutes. Why would product B have more substitutes? Because people can easily move from Q1 and switch over to Q2. Whereas product A is likely to have less substitutes and people cannot switch as easily. So that's one reason why that might be, right? That might be. So I might just put a little note in there. I'm going to shorten the word substitutes. All right, more substitutes there. Now, the next question I'd get you to think about is this. Which one is likely to be a necessity, something that people really need, and which one is likely to be a luxury, one that they like, but they don't really need as much? If it's a necessity, I would say that good A looks like a necessity, because even though the price goes up, I'm showing the price going up, people continue essentially to buy much the same quantity because they really need it. They don't like paying a higher price, but they will pay a higher price. Whereas over in good B, this is more likely to be a luxury good, because when the price goes up, people say, I like that good, but I don't need it. I don't have to have it, and therefore I'll stop buying that good. So the product on the right-hand side has a higher level of elasticity than the product on the left-hand side. So this product, which product is more elastic? Which product is more elastic? Product B is more elastic. We skipped a couple of slides, and I'm going to go back to them after a time. I'm going to move forward, I've decided, and just explain some of this in... No, I won't do that. So I'll come. I've missed a couple of slides. I'm going to keep going for a minute. So then, so let's just work on this concept here for a bit. I'm going to draw another demand curve here for you. The two demand curves. And on the left, right, this is product A. We just did product A. Here was our demand curve. Right, there is our demand curve. Product B, here is our demand curve. And then we change our prices, change in price, and now I'm going to write underneath here, here is our change in the price, right? There is the change, here is the change in the price. And I want you to have a look at the change in the quantity and think about which one has changed the most. There's the change in price there that I've shown on the left-hand axis, vertical axis. And here is the change in the quantity. And you can see that the change in quantity is much smaller than the change in price. On the other hand, on the right-hand side, here is the change in price. Change in price is the same. Right, they're exactly the same. Change in price is the same, but the change in the quantity is much bigger. The change in the quantity is much bigger. And so the way that we look at our elasticity is to say, what is the percentage change in the quantity? What's the percentage change in price? And in this case, our answer will be, we've got a lower number on top and a higher number on the bottom. So elasticity is less than 1. Elasticity is less than 1. We're going to have a number that's less than 1. On the other hand, where the product is more elastic, I have a bigger number on the top than on the bottom. So our elasticity here, right? Elasticity here is more than 1. So what are these two diagrams showing us? We're showing us that the price changed, caused the quantity to change, but it didn't cause it to change a whole lot because the consumers were relatively unresponsive. Whereas over here, the price changed, and it caused the quantity to change more than the price change. So we say that is more elastic, right? The right-hand one is more elastic because the change is bigger. The change is bigger on the right-hand side. The change in the quantity is larger on the right-hand side. So when we think about elasticity, we've got the demand elasticity is when the price elasticity is greater than 1. Price elasticity is greater than 1. Inelastic, the price elasticity is less than 1. And then we have what is called unit elasticity, and this is where the price change is equal to 1. The price change is equal to 1. What causes goods to be more elastic? What causes goods to be more elastic? I'm going to tell you about elastic goods, and you can just, from that, you will know what the characteristics are of inelastic goods because they're just the opposite. Think about what a price elastic good means. A price elastic good means that if we have a price at one level and a different price at another level, and we change the price from P1 up to P2, from P1 to P2, then the quantity goes from Q1 to Q2. And what we could say is going on there is that there is a large response. What's going on there is a large response. Now, what causes a large response? Well, if there is a high availability of substitutes, when the price goes up, consumers can simply switch to the other good. In other words, the substitution effect will be bigger. The substitution effect will be bigger if there are more substitutes. So we looked at the income effect, we looked at the substitution effect, and we saw that people will switch from one to the other, but if you can't switch, then demand will be inelastic. Second, the definition of goods. What do we mean by this? We mean, are the goods luxuries or are they necessities? Right, I might have misspelled that. Good. Right, are they luxuries or are they necessities? If they are luxuries, then when the price goes up, I'm showing the price going up, people can easily move their demand in for those goods, but they won't do it if they're necessities. Thirdly, income share. Income share. Think about a very expensive product like an airfare to the other side of the world. Now, that airfare might be $1,500 today, or let's say $1,000. If it goes up by 50%, that would represent $500 of your income. Okay, $500 of your income. But then imagine some other product that's not $1,000, it's $1. And if its price goes up 50%, its price doesn't rise $500, it rises 50 cents. And so small items will tend to be less elastic because although the percentage price rise is the same as the airfare, in the case of the airfare, if it started at $1,000, a change would be $500. That's a lot of income. Whereas if the price started at $1 and it rises again by 50%, it's still only 50 cents of your income. And so goods that tend to have a longer, right, goods that have a larger percentage share of income tend to be more elastic than goods that occupy a lesser percentage share. So I'll give you a quick example. Which is likely to be more elastic? The price of an airfare between here and Europe or a change in the price of a toothbrush? Now, the toothbrush will be far less elastic for two reasons. Here are the reasons why a toothbrush will be less elastic. One, down the bottom, a toothbrush is a necessity. And secondly, the fare to England occupies a greater percentage of income. So there's two factors there that would make it less elastic. The last factor is the time horizon. So the longer the time, the more elastic demand becomes. I'll give you the reason for this. imagine today you go in to buy your coffee, and today the coffee costs $4. Let's say $3 today, and then tomorrow you go in and it's $5. What are you going to do? You know what you're going to do in the short run? Probably nothing. You'll buy the coffee and you will be unhappy. But by the time next week comes around, you will have enough time to find another coffee shop. So although your demand today might be inelastic, by next week it's more elastic because you've had time to look for substitutes. So these are the factors involved in elasticity of demand. I'm going to now go back and I'm going to finish doing some calculations. I'm going to do this in two ways. We have two ways of calculating elasticity. So the first way is by calculating between, this is the method I'm going to use here, right? And this is called the interval method, right? This is called the interval method. I'm going to rename it, right? I'm going to call it the first price method, all right? It's the first price method. So we're going to start at point A, and we're going to go to point B. And the way that we are going to look at this is to say, what is the percentage change in quantity over the percentage change in price? All right, what is the percentage change in quantity over the percentage change in price? So let's think about this change in price here. The price went down. What did the price go down by? 4. And what was the original price? What was the original price here? The original price was 10. All right, the original price was 10. So coming down onto the next slide, we've got a percentage change in the quantity over the percentage change in the price. And what was our percentage change in our change in price? We had a change of 4 over original price of 10. So I have a change in price of 40%. Right? I have a change in price of 40%. And then I go back and I say, what is the change in the quantity? Right? What is the change in the quantity here? Right? What's the change in the quantity? And the quantity has gone up, right? The change in the quantity has gone up, and that would be, let's think about it. The change in the quantity is 2, and the change in the original quantity was 5. So come back down here. All right. So the change in the quantity is 2, and the change and the original was 5. So that is also 40%. All right, 40%. And in this situation, the elasticity is 1. In that situation, the elasticity equals 1. Let's go back to our diagram and see what would happen if we go up another 4. What would happen if we make this? What would happen if we make this number 14 and this number 3? Right? We make that number 14 and we make that 3. So what's happened here? There's been a change of 4, right? There's been a change of 4. So come down to our next table. What's our percentage change in quantity? Percentage price. The price change is exactly the same. All right, the price change is exactly the same. Change in price is 4, and it went up from 10, so that's 40%. Whoops, what's going on here? Something strange is going on. I think I might leave our lecture here. I'm just going to leave our lecture at this point. And I want to flesh this out with you. I'm going to finish this tomorrow. I might just erase what I've done, right? Because I want to come back and fix this example for you. I'm going to show you another example tomorrow. But this is our formula, right? This is our formula here, right? There's our formula. One thing I want you to see here is this, that the change in the quantity, the change in the price went down by 4, right? The change in the price went down by 4. So that's a negative number, right? That's our negative number. And the change in the quantity went up by 2. So although I've got an answer of 1, right, actually, strictly speaking, the elasticity is negative 1, right? Elasticity is negative 1. And we have to think about, well, what does this negative 1 mean? Right? What does this negative 1 mean? What this negative 1 means, it doesn't really mean anything, because this is a demand curve, and as the price goes down, the quantity always goes up. So that negative 1 really just indicates that this is a demand curve. So although we know the negative is there, we don't take any notice of it when we're doing the elasticity of demand. So although we've got this number negative 1, we really just look at the 1. In other words, when we look at elasticity of demand, we use the absolute value, right? We use the absolute value. We drop the negative sign, even though we know that the negative sign is there. Even though that we know the negative sign is there. So I'm going to end the lecture there. The reason I'm going to end the lecture there is because our time is running out, and I really want to explain this to you in a bit more detail. And I might even insert a few extra slides into the presentation tomorrow. It's 10 minutes to midday. To do this properly, I do need a bit more time. I said to you last week that some of our topics would not be able to be finished in the appropriate time, and this is one of them. So we will start on the elasticity of demand tomorrow. We will do the elasticity of supply. I want to do it in a fair bit of detail with you because it does impact on later topics. And so we'll start with that tomorrow. We'll then move on to the next topic, which is equilibrium. We may well finish the equilibrium topic tomorrow. In the end, none of this will be an issue because our last two of our last 3 topics are quite short. So we will get to finish the course on time. So I'll just leave you with this today. We'll start with elasticity tomorrow and then move on to topic 4. So thanks for your attention, and we'll see you all tomorrow.